Is this Batman's origin story? Or is this James Gordon's origin story? Come with me and find out as we read Batman Year One. Hello and welcome back, everybody. My name is Juan Wilson, and thanks for joining me today as we cover Batman Year One. I've been very excited to begin this. For those of you who haven't already, you can check out my first video, which I made, which is kind of the explanation of the journey that I've begun in reading these Batman comics, and it all begins with Batman Year One. And if you know who Batman is at all, then you probably already know his origin story for the most part, which was the case for me as well. In terms of the basics, spoiler alert, Bruce, for his mommy and daddy, it doesn't end well. And so I was excited, to say the least, to start this and really read kind of the beginnings. But to start off, Year One, written by Frank Miller and the artist David Mazzucchelli. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. This was written in 1986. Now, Year One collects really the issues of Batman 404 through 407. This covers parts 1 through 4 of Batman Year One. Now, like I said, this for the most part, my initial thoughts with everything is I very much enjoyed it. I mean, the artwork in this is incredible. I really like the tone. I feel like it's very gritty. A lot of the character work, a lot of the writing, I really did enjoy it. And I was surprised by a lot of things. I kind of expected this whole issue to mainly just cover the origin story. So I was mainly expecting Bruce to just be young child. And honestly, there's only really like a page or two that shows him almost like a flashback of him, with his parents' death. And for the most part, it is, as the title suggests, we are really viewing Batman's first year, Year One, which maybe I'm slow, but I just didn't anticipate that. I expected something a little bit different, but it was cool. It was actually really cool to just see certain progressions with things. But as I stated in the intro, this is, in large part, I almost felt like this was almost an origin story for James Gordon, who is an awesome character. I actually love a lot of his parts in this. Let's get into it and let's talk about, I call this a review, but, I'm no comic book expert. I'm no expert in Batman. So it's a little unfair for me to, try to critique. But really what this is it's just my feelings, around the story, my experience in it, so whatever my opinions are, they're my opinions, which are of course always correct. No, I'm just kidding. But, it's just my feelings, how much fun I had while reading it. But let's kind of start off with a little bit of a summary of what happens in here. Part 1 begins with Gordon, and it shows Gordon, and, we get a lot of his partner, who is Detective Arnold Flass, who's kind of corrupt, and they were out to get Gordon from the get-go, which was kind of crazy. And I didn't expect that. They do some hazing for sure as they beat up Gordon, and they jump him and stuff, and some crazy stuff goes on. Some interesting things kind of in the first issue as well, is Bruce going out, and I guess he was kind of testing things out, wanting to kind of get his wiggles out with beating up some criminals or something, or looking for a fight is what I imagine kind of happened. And he comes across Selena Kyle, which is kind of cool. But of course we see kind of the classic Bruce deciding to be Batman as he has flashbacks and whatnot, and I'll get into that here in a little bit too. Part 2 gets into seeing a little bit more of the corruption within, the commissioner and a lot of the higher ups, mingling with these crime bosses like the Falcones, and things like that, which was really cool. I loved seeing some of these characters that I've heard of a lot, again, mainly through the movies, but they're familiar enough to me, which was really neat to see that. There was also an interesting romance, or a forbidden love, between Gordon and his other partner, Essen. which totally threw me for a loop. I was like, Gordon, what are you doing, man? As he has a wife at home and a pregnant wife, for that matter. And then there was a really cool scene in part 3 where Batman is holed up in a house and they drop a bomb on him. I mean, it was crazy. I'm like, man, this gets real in comics. You know, they don't hold back. They don't pull their punches. They just drop a bomb on him, which was pretty nuts. But yeah, cool fight scenes and stuff, seeing Batman with the SWAT team and taking him out, you know, escaping, that kind of a thing. And then in part 4, it's really where everything comes to a head, and I actually very much enjoyed kind of the climax. It was probably the most gripping part of the reading, where the commissioner is like kidnaps Gordon's baby, and basically through a car crash, which, by the way, Gordon's chasing him down and just shooting at the car. And I'm like, the whole time I'm like, dude, your baby's in there, what are you doing? It crashes, the car crashes, and they throw the baby off the bridge, and luckily Bruce is there to catch him, and all is well. And then it ends off with a cool little Joker, a nod to the Joker as kind of the next villain. And so anyways, what did I like? What did I not like? You know, the good, bad, the ugly. Let's get into it. So for the good, what I really liked, some of my favorite moments in this was Gordon's revenge on Flass within the first part, when he was after he got beat up by his partner, and it was definitely more than hazing. You know, they didn't like that Gordon was straight-laced, if you will, and a good cop. And man, Gordon gets his awesome revenge. I feel like it's one of the coolest shots, one of the coolest pictures of Gordon's face as he's just about to break loose on his partner Flass, and just beats the crap out of him, and then I guess leaves him naked and cuffed outside, which I was like, man, Gordon is hardcore. I definitely like this character. And same thing going into even the second part, Gordon deals with like a hostage situation, and just that whole scene was really, really cool. So I feel like Gordon is MVP in Batman Year One. It should be Batman Year One in parentheses. You're gonna really enjoy Gordon. This is about Gordon. You know, something like that. That's really how it should be titled. But I really did enjoy his parts. In part 2, I really liked just kind of seeing some of the artwork, especially with dropping the bomb and everything on that building. Like I said already, you know, that fight sequence in part 3 was really neat. I feel like my favorite part in all of that was just seeing the escape that Batman had with all the bats coming in. You know, he signals the bats, which is very reminiscent of Batman Begins, which I've heard, actually, that there's a lot of inspiration for Batman Begins by Christopher Nolan from this one, Batman Year One, which makes sense because it's Batman Begins. So I thought that was really cool. The artwork of that was awesome. So a lot of cool things, a lot of cool things to love. Again, I did love the nod to the Joker at the end, but let's get into what were some things that I disliked. Some of the writing was really difficult for me to just kind of stomach. A lot of the exposition, which is at the same time kind of their inner monologue or inner dialogue as they're thinking, they're in their head, or it's, you know, there's kind of the description box that's describing what happens, but for whatever reason, it's almost like they were one and the same. And so the character, I guess it's more of that first person perspective, which maybe I'm not as into the first person perspective. You know, I've done a lot of reading, and most of the time, you know, it's more third person. And so the first person perspective in the dialogue was, or in the exposition, was just, I don't know, not necessarily my favorite, as it would kind of describe like, oh, I look at him through the window and he's coming to get me, you know, or something like that. Definitely not knocking Frank Miller or anything like that, or the writing as a whole. I think it's just more me not used to this medium, because as I have continued to read some of the other comics, some of them have still done it, but I feel like for whatever reason in Batman Year One, it kind of was the worst of it, as I've seen. In other subsequent issues that I've read, it wasn't really as bad. You know, the exposition tends to be more exposition, and then people internally, they have their inner monologues, you know, which is totally fine, you know, and I think keeping it separate is definitely helpful. But overall, I'd say it was very enjoyable. Now, let's get into the ugly. So some ugly or silly things, some things that I thought were just a little bit weird. Bruce thinking, oh, okay, you know, I have this alibi. I'm going to go out here. Nobody's going to suspect me being out here, but I got to put some scar on my face to help nobody recognize me. And that's all it is. And it just very much reminded me of kind of Clark Kent putting on some glasses, you know, so that nobody recognizes that he's Superman. But I'm like, hey, I guess this is just comic book logic. You know, I'm not necessarily familiar with this, but it, you know, it's one of those things I guess you gotta just accept. But I did think that was kind of funny. One thing I do remember is I just thought it was funny is Selina jumping down and then immediately Bruce just like decks her in the face, which I thought was really, really funny. I like actually laughed when I read that, which I don't know why it's funny to me. I think it's just so unexpected, and knowing that Selina is like Catwoman, you know, and she's more of a prominent character, and she just jumps down and in a lot of cases, you know, she's Bruce's love interest, and so for her to just jump down and he just decks her in the face, I thought was just really funny. Also, I felt like there seemed to be almost like inconsistencies in terms of some of the feeling of like Batman in general, like in terms of his strength or his capabilities. It's almost like in part one, you know, he gets shot and then he's taken away by the cops, and he like breaks out of his handcuffs, punches the cops in the face, crashes the car, rises from the flames, you know, all this, like it's like, man, this guy, he's insane. He's like punching like brick walls in half, you know, it's just crazy stuff. And then I felt like later in some of the other parts, it's like he's like fighting these teenagers, and it seems like he can't even do anything, you know, these like kids are like beating him up kind of a thing. And I know it's kind of meant to show, you know, he's figuring things out, you know, he's still unrefined, but I'm like, well, just a second ago, he was like punching his fist through a brick wall and breaking through handcuffs. Like, where is that guy at, you know? And I guess a lot of it is, you know, my expectation of seeing, you know, like I said, Batman Begins, and knowing that, you know, at least in Batman Begins, you know, Bruce like becomes a ninja, you know what I mean? And so he's basically the Batman that I feel like I already know and love, even just from starting to become Batman. And so it was an interesting, I guess, flavor of just seeing Batman almost. There were moments in the middle of this where it almost felt like I was watching the Adam West Batman just kind of run away almost cartoonishly. At one point he just kind of scurries away and he gets like shot in the leg, you know, and then like a week later he's like skiing down a mountain. I'm like, is that so? Like, what's happening here? We have this superhuman Bruce at one point, but then at another point he almost seems like very weak and vulnerable. And I guess that's a lot of maybe what they're trying to convey, is that this is just some guy, you know, he is vulnerable, which I did appreciate. But again, some of it just maybe because of the jarriness or it jumping around, it just seemed almost like, which way are we going? Are we Adam West Batman, or are we like this superhuman Batman, you know? So just some funny things like that. I think one of the biggest silly moments was just at the very end, after Batman dives head first, literally straight down, catching the baby, which was pretty crazy, pretty epic. And then they get up, baby's fine, Gordon's fine, Bruce is fine, and Gordon just says something to the effect of, "Hey, thanks so much. You must be Batman, but I can't see with my glasses off. So, yeah, I don't know who you are." It was kind of an interesting cop out, I felt like, where it was like, oh, how are we going to tie this together? Well, let's just make sure Gordon doesn't have his glasses, and then Batman can still, remain anonymous. Again, some moments that just felt like maybe if there was a little bit more thinking that went into it, there could have been a more creative way to make it seem more real. I don't really know, but it was another moment where I just kind of laughed. But anyways, I did like it. Overall, I'd say I enjoyed it, and it was fun. I actually really did enjoy the comic book medium and reading it in this format, and seeing year one, seeing where a lot of the stories that I know and love, like I referenced, Batman Begins. There's a lot of things from this that inspired that movie to come to be, and so there's just a lot of cool things to harken back to. I can definitely see why people definitely keep this in a very special place in their heart, and they always harken back to it, and it's a very highly regarded entry in the Batman reading, if you will. And so, yeah, I liked it overall. I'd say that as I have read more of the comics that have filled in some of the gaps, it has helped me to enjoy Batman Year One more. I initially gave it a ranking of like 6 out of 10, which again is maybe not very fair as my very first entry, where I have very little in terms of experience, or no experience actually with reading comics, and so there's not much for me to compare it with. But I'd say, I'm not necessarily scoring it based off of quality. It really just mainly comes down to my enjoyment of it. And I'd say it was kind of a 6 out of 10 initially. It was like, oh, that was cool. I wish there was a lot of other things that, or I wish some things were different. But as I've read more, I'd say it went up a notch, where I'd say probably like a 7 out of 10, which for me, as I rank movies and other things, that's a pretty good rating. That's like, that's pretty good. I liked it, and not necessarily like exceptional or excellent, or like, wow, I had a really good time with that, which I have had some better experiences, I'd say, with some of the later issues, and more enjoyable experiences as I'm just getting my feet wet more and experiencing more. So really enjoyed it, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it, and I hope that let me know kind of your thoughts on it. Let me know if you agree or disagree with a lot of what I'm saying, and let me know if you have any suggestions, especially as I go through and read some more. Let me know if you have any suggestions of just how I should look at things, things that you want to hear as I'm covering each and every issue. And we'll keep making these. The next one on the list is we're covering Batman Shaman, which I really did enjoy. Really, really cool. Filled in a lot of gaps for Batman Year One, so it helped me to enjoy some of the initial parts of this. And yeah, we're gonna cover it in the next one. So thank you for joining me again, and stay safe, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.